Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's having a great week. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to everyone. We're doing the show right before Christmas Eve. We do Christmas Eve every year at my in law's house. So tomorrow we'll be heading out, and of course, it'll be a huge feast of food, way more than anyone needs, but lots of leftovers and stuff. And then we enjoy Christmas Day. So hopefully, everyone has a great holiday and is getting some time off from work. I was going to throw up before we bring my guest out. I was going to throw up my new book here is coming out, and it's called Mayhem in Music City. That's coming out January 13th. It's on pre-order right now. You can order paperbacks, pre-order them through my website, signed copies if you want. I don't have them yet, but I'll get them hopefully in a few weeks. Ordered my proof copy today for me to go through. But they are available on pre-order for $3.99, which is $3 off the normal price. So hopefully you'll take a look at that and get the latest in the Jarvis Mann series, book 11. Hard to believe it's already been 11 books in that series. But and number 12, I've actually started a little bit on number 12 already because there's a little bit of carryover from that. So, but anyway, more important stuff to get on to. We're going to bring our guest up here. And we're going to bring him out here tonight. And we've got D.G. McCool, though he put it up as Dell, which is your first name. Hi, Dell. How you doing?
All right, sir. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. You've watched the show before. I've had you comment a couple times. So last time you had met the meshes, I said, I got to get you on the show here. So I'm glad we finally were able to squeeze you into the schedule here right before the holidays. So
Yes.
you got lots of plans for this next week or two with all the events coming up?
I think I'm going to spend some time with our kids and grandkids over in the Austin area. I think that's
Oh,
our plan.
yeah. Is that a long ways away from where you are?
Yeah, it's 200 miles from here. I'm in East Texas, near Trinity, just north of Houston, about an hour and a half.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember going to Houston one year in February and then went down to the South Padre Islands there and walking on the beach there. It was really nice in February down there. It gets a little warm in the summer, I'm sure.
It does.
Well, great. Well, give us a little background on yourself. Tell everybody the important stuff about you. I know you've got a couple of different um, author names that you use for your various books, but give us all the important background on you.
Sure. Well, outside of the writing, I was in the U.S. Army for 10 years. Then I was in law enforcement for 14. And so using some of that background kind of inspired me on some of the things I do write. And that's kind of where some of the initial parts, plus from the time I was at elementary school, I enjoyed science fiction, Ray Bradbury and some others. And so that was kind of what helped me get going to think about writing.
So when you were reading those stories, did you always have ideas in your mind already then that you wanted to write? Did you
Sure.
ever write any of those down? Do you have
I,
any of those
actually,
old ones
actually,
stored
I
away somewhere?
Actually, I do. I recently we were going through some old things in storage and found a spiral notebook and a binder. And the very first story was called The Big Monster, and it was written when I was in fourth grade, which was about 1966. And it's handwritten, of course, I think it's maybe one handwritten or a page and a half. And then there's probably 15 stories that I wrote between elementary school and the end of high school.
And those stories, when you look back on them, what do you think when you're reading them?
Well, if I take into fact how old I was when I wrote them, and my imagination was pretty vivid, which it still is, even at my current age, and so yeah, it's entertaining.
Yeah, it's always interesting looking back. I've got some stuff stored away in cabinets and stuff. So you said you were in the military. You were in the army, right? So and pretty long time. It looked like almost 10 years.
Yeah, yes. I did a couple of years at Fort Polk, Louisiana, 77, 78. Then I went to Germany when it was West Germany and spent 3 years in the border cavalry up near a place called Hof. And Then I came back, went to Fort Campbell, and jumped out of helicopters and planes and fun things like that. And then I went back to Germany, back to the border for 3 more years. So my tenure was 6 years on the Iron Curtain. And that that also, allows you a lot of time to think.
So were you married at that time when you were in the Army?
I was married, but not to my current wife.
Oh, okay.
My wife I'm with now, we've been together 31 years, and she's a big advocate of my writing and push me to stay focused and get projects done because if not, I will, lose focus.
So you're in law enforcement as well. It looks like quite a few years there. So
Yes, sir.
what did you do in law enforcement?
Sure. I did 8 years in Harris County Sheriff's Department in Houston. And everybody in that department, you start out working in the jail system with the inmates, and I did that for about a year and a half, and then got my badge and was regular patrol deputy. I later moved up to a little town called Pittsburgh, Kansas. It's southeast corner. It's my parents' hometown. I was in law enforcement 6 years up there, but I was a police officer. And so it was a little different role, and made it up to police lieutenant. And then in 2000, we moved back to Texas to Austin.
Yeah, I'm amazed. I did the Citizens Police Academy here, but I was amazed and talked to officers and did ride-alongs and everything. And I always encourage people if you're in a city where you have a chance to do that,
Mm.
it's a great experience just to be out there and see.
Yeah,
But it's amazing what they carry these days
yeah, yeah,
on these
yeah,
vests. Some of them use vests now for a lot of it instead because it's so
right,
hard, so much on the belt. But the
right.
evolution of the weaponry they're carrying and everything, they have to. I mean, the old days it was six shooters, and I don't know what you were carrying in those days, but I'm sure it changed
Uh,
a lot
I
in the
was
post Army.
in '86 when I first went into law enforcement. I was carrying a 357 revolver,
Mhm.
and the holster they called them Widowmakers because they had an actual flap over them, and so it was no way you're going to quick draw that thing. And all our bullets we carried them in loops,
Yeah,
and if you were lucky, had speed loaders. But that was how I started. And by the time I got out in the year 2000, of course, we had automatics and
yeah.
everything.
Yeah, and of course, they have the tasers now and the pepper
Yeah,
spray, and you
yeah,
used to carry the wooden batons, and now
yeah.
they have, of course, the extendable ones,
Yeah,
and
yeah, we just went to the Asps right before I got out, the
yeah,
extendable baton, so
yeah, yeah, so much. So, and they talk about the weight too. And so, how much weight did you think you were carrying in those days?
compared to the people nowadays, like you stated, nothing, but we were our holsters, we had what's called keepers, and these little straps that keep them on your belt so your gun belt doesn't fall down when you're walking, and, it was heavy enough.
I can't even imagine trying to chase somebody with all the equipment that they carry these days. A lot of police departments require them to wear vests these days as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
Did you wear any type of?
Well, we had body armor under our uniform shirt. So yeah, we had a vest on in that aspect, but not an external, belt like a vest like you see nowadays.
Yeah.
So
And there probably was a lot heavier in those days than they are now too. I think they've gotten a little better weight
yeah,
wise.
I would agree with you. I think a lot of things that we did back then, we had patrol cars, not SUVs, and
Yeah,
I started out. We had Chevy Caprice, big old boat, and then we went to the Crown Vic, the Ford smaller vehicles. And when I got out, we were still doing that. Nowadays, of course, they've got all types of vehicles.
yeah. Police interceptors are really popular here. When we were doing the police academy, they let us drive the vehicles.
Uh,
They still had one Crown Vic
yeah,
in their fleet. It was like the oldest vehicle they had. I guess
right,
whoever was low man on the totem pole got to drive that one.
right.
But I
They're
couldn't believe the handling on some of those things. I mean, the steering and everything, we got the backup in them and everything, and
oh yeah.
then I'm looking at all the computers they have and everything, and I mean, you probably didn't have much of that when you were driving as,
Well,
uh, the
the last
communications
yeah,
and stuff.
yeah, the last couple years I was in, we actually put laptops, compact Armada laptops in our patrol cars in Kansas, and then, the company I went to work for when I got out of law enforcement, that's what they did. They built those little tablet computers that go in, public safety, law enforcement, fire department, so I was exposed to that for, another 17 years from the civilian side going out and putting that equipment and selling that equipment, to law enforcement.
Yeah, and the multitasking involved when I was doing the ride along, he's talking to me and he's listening to the calls at the same time, and I'm like, "How are you keeping track of all this?"
Oh, yeah, yeah. We
It's
we
it's
yeah,
quite impressive.
we didn't have cell phones back then to distract us, so I'm sure
Right.
that could be a distraction today.
Yeah, yeah. He had his cell phone. He had the laptop that was telling calls were coming in on the laptop, and then he had the radio he was listening to, and
Oh yeah.
it's like I don't even know how he was paying attention when he was driving. I mean, talk about
Right.
distracted driving and
Right.
stuff.
Right. Exactly.
So I saw on your website that you're an avid RPG gamer. So when did that all start? When did you start getting into the
And
gaming
I,
stuff?
I'm in from the early days when I was in the Army, 1977. So we're talking Gary Gygax and the original Dungeons and Dragon 3 books and all this good stuff. And you're sitting around the barracks with nothing to do, and a lot of the guys who get together and you start playing D&D. And then when I got over to Europe, it was real big over there with the soldiers, and so I went through that, and then I went into several of the spin-off games. And even today, I've still got I have my original set of polyhedral dice, and I have several other dice. I'll see dice in these stores that are unique, and I'll go buy them, even though I don't actively play right this minute. So.
That's that's great. So is that how you decompress? Is that kind of your relaxation thing that you enjoy doing?
Right, right. Yeah, for me, well, I do karaoke also. So I enjoy going out and doing karaoke whenever it's possible. And I do a lot of the old, really, to people today, it's really old stuff, 1950s, 60s songs. And that, and then just get on the computer and kind of surf the web will help you decompress.
So who are some of the artists in the 50s and 60s that you always like to sing? Anyone in particular?
Yeah, well, my name is Dell, obviously, but my nickname is Delvis, and I actually have a tattoo that says that because I used to do a lot of Elvis Presley songs back years ago, and Conway Twitty, Randy Travis. Then I do some of the even older stuff than that from like Roy Orbison and some of those guys. So
Yeah, it's good stuff. We won't
yeah,
make you sing for us
I
tonight. So.
I appreciate that. I didn't warm up.
So I found this picture on your website, so I had to ask you a question about this, and I didn't tell you I was going to throw that up. So I have to ask about the hat. Now, when I
Sure.
first saw this, I don't know if you're a football fan, but I
Okay.
thought of the logo that they use for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Ah, yes, yes, yes.
And he
The
has a
old
similar hat, though he has a feather
right.
and he's got a dagger in his mouth. But
Well, that one has a feather. Give me a second here. We didn't talk about this, but I'll show you since you brought that up. Uh, it's right here, and you
it
can
does have a
see
feather. There
it's
you
got
go.
the feathers. It's got everybody. You can set that thing up on your head. But little old guy like that. But what happened was I went to the Renaissance with my adult children a
Yeah.
couple of years ago, and I saw the hat. I really liked it, so I got it. And then because I got it, I felt I had to wear it. So for a while, I was wearing it when I was doing different things online, and that's where that photo kind of originated from. Was wearing that, and so I just kind of used it. But it is supposed to be like a Three Musketeers hat, is what they kind of sell it at the Renaissance Festival.
And when did you dress up in the whole
Well, I
thing, or
went
is it
there.
just the hat?
Well, it worked out that way. I went
Yeah.
there just in ball cap, t-shirt, shorts, and tennis shoes, and I came home in $500 worth of kilt, a full kilt set because my ancestry. The kids bought me a bunch of stuff and all kinds of things to go with it. A dagger, a Celtic dagger, and but the hat didn't really mesh, but I wore it anyway with it while I was there at Renaissance. So, but I did get the little black beanie that I'm supposed to wear with my Celtic outfit. So I didn't get to go this year. I was supposed to go, and but I have the outfit now.
So you mentioned a little bit about you kind of always enjoyed reading and you started writing, obviously fairly young age and all that. And you
Right.
mentioned a couple of authors. Are there some other authors that have kind of inspired you through the years? Because
Yeah.
you're in kind of the fantasy, sci-fi. You've done a
Sure.
little horror.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Of course. Anybody that's wrote fantasy, J.R.R. Tolkien. Behind me, I've got about 6 or 8 books by Isaac Asimov,
Mhm.
H.G. Wells, Ray Bradbury. A lot of people don't remember him, but Ray Bradbury, I liked it. He had one called R is for Rocket. I have one by author Jack Vance, Vandals of the Void. That was probably the one that impressed me the most because was built around trying to do realism, so to speak, where people were flying within our solar system in these large spacecraft that were like ocean liners. And then there was these pirates hiding in the asteroid belt and attacking people, and that just really opened my imagination up. And that was like an elementary school book, and I still have a copy of it here.
And then horror, you've written a little bit of horror stuff too, correct?
Sure,
So,
sure,
so
sure.
like Stephen King,
Oh,
those other.
yeah, he's the obvious one, and that
Yeah, it's
most
always
people
Stephen.
say, and yeah, and yeah, that would probably be my number one in that area. I've obviously read some others, but I kind of follow a lot of what he does, and some of my horror probably is in a similar way to things he's written.
Yeah. So and so those have been kind of the genres. Have you ever read? Do you read stuff outside those areas that you like to write as well?
Well, right now I think across the board, like you stated, I've got science fiction, several that are published. I've got a handful of horror, some paranormal. I've got some paranormal. That one book we're going to talk about, the short story book, is kind of a mix of about 8 different stories from different genres. So yeah, if it's a good story, I will like to read it and or write about that area. But if it's if I don't get into the I guess into that part of the genre, then I don't jump on the bandwagon with every new writer that comes out, except you. Yeah, you.
Well, yeah, I need more of you out there. So what I
Right?
need,
I
right?
hear that. I hear that.
So, um, oh geez, I forgot what I was going to ask you there. So, um, oh, therapeutic. Do you find writing therapeutic? Did you when you write, is that kind of a therapy for you, or is it
Yeah.
just something that you just always had in you and you like to?
Well, yeah, thank you for asking.
Yeah.
No, with me, because after the law enforcement, I worked 24 years in Austin, 17 with that computer company, and then the balance of it in some electric truck companies and so forth. So I was always in upper management and very detail oriented and busy. So when I retired 2.5 years ago, I'd already written a handful of books, but I needed something to do with my time. So coming into my office here at home, I've actually got a nameplate on the door of my little company, Sandell Writers, and I come in here, and my wife tells me, "When you go in that room, you're working. This is not a hobby," And but it really helps me focus because, again, if I come in here and I don't think I'm working, then I'll be watching cat videos all day. So
Or doing RPG games or
or
something
I
like.
will. It's very possible.
When you have the headset on, is that an indication that you're doing RPG?
Well, it's a indication that I'm doing something I don't want my wife to hear because 'cause she'll be in the other room, and if it's blaring over my monitor, she knows what I'm up to, so
All right, well, let's talk about your book. So,
right,
where do you want to start when it comes? 'Cause you got a few different books out there, and we got a few
okay,
pictures to throw up. So, you
okay.
direct me on where you want.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about the Never Say Nevermore. You mentioned that,
Okay.
and,
So,
yeah, that one there. That's actually in this area, up near Huntsville, which is, again, about an hour and a half north of Houston, and then I'm just, east of it by about 30 minutes. There's several independent authors up here, and, within that group, they've, this is their 3rd, book they've done for an anthology of different things, and it was around the Halloween time. And a year ago, they did one called Nevermore. So this year it was Never Say Nevermore. So within that book, I was asked to submit a source story. So I wrote one called The Cellar, which we'll talk about in a moment, and it's in that book, and it was a lot of fun working with the group. And I really support anybody that wants, especially if they're an indie author, to get with a group of writers who are focused. We have a secondary group that's an intermediate publishing group for people who don't want to just write, but they want to learn how to publish, self-publish. So we have these 2 groups that we kind of hang out with out here.
well, and short stories is a little bit of a lost art for some people.
Right.
It's tough, but there's still a lot of people out there that put together some really good stuff in a short format because
Right.
there's a challenge.
Yeah, because if you've got 60, 80,000 words to tell your story, that's great. But when you got 7,000 words to tell your story, you have to tell your story. You can't do you can do some world building, but you can't get too carried away. And so that was a lot of fun with that. So I took that same story and I went ahead and the people who read it said, "What happened after that?" Because it's a cliffhanger. So I went ahead and wrote out the balance of that story, which is the book cover called The Cellar that I think you have there. And yep, that one. And that's the full story. And that's actually me in that picture. What I did was I took one of my Harris County sheriff's deputy photos and I put it in AI and I said, put a mask on me. And it put that thing on me. And I went, wow, cool. So I saved the photo and made it into and then I added the Leviathan cross symbol on it. And that's part of the whole story background. And I went ahead and made that a little larger. It's I think what is it now? It's maybe 20,000 words, 17,000 words, something like that. And so still a short story, but it's you could call it a complete short story. But it is a book one because it leaves you hanging at the end of that book as to what's going on.
So
And that
there's a book two in the works, huh?
there will be a book too. I've got a handful of other ones that got in front of it. This one I was really wasn't on my roadmap, but it got on there when I was working with Never Say Nevermore, and so I felt compelled to go ahead and do this and then put it into my catalog so that I have something to come back. And I also we didn't get a chance to talk about this before, but when they did Never Say Nevermore, Dennis Waller, who's the one who published the book, and he's an author in his own. He's got a lot of books, 50 books or something out there. He wrote a soundtrack to go with that book at the release. They did a big release in a little theater building here near here. And so I followed suit and wrote a soundtrack to go with this book. And it's actually on Spotify. If somebody goes out, you can hear it. And it's kind of a creepy story about a girl wakes up chained in a basement, standing in waist deep water, and is trying to figure out how she got there and who might have put her there. It might look like this guy here. And yeah, so that's that whole song soundtrack came from that. So that was kind of cool too. I enjoyed that. The next book that's coming out, and I originally was planning on end of year, but I've dragged my feet too long, so now I'm saying Q1, and that'll be the short story book. And what this is during the time that I was working with the group, the Piney Wood Authors Group out of Huntsville. I mapped out about 10 short stories, and I wasn't sure which one I wanted to use, so I ended up using the Cellar. And I had all these stories that was about 7,000 words written already. I thought, no, why waste them? So I went ahead and created a short story book, but in it, it's got a little mix of everything. You got some sci-fi, you got some paranormal, some horror, a little mix of everything. And that book is scheduled to come out. Like I say, I say Q1. I'd like to have it up by the end of January.
And do I have that one there,
You
the
have
short stories? Yeah. So it's this
There it
one?
is. That one
Yeah.
there. That's the
Yeah.
guy. So that's my next book that'll be getting published, and it should be out, like I said, by the end of January. Once I get a little further, we just finish up some editing stuff. So once that's finished, the stories are all written and through First Pass and everything. Then I'll be able to go ahead and give a more defined date for release. But it's interesting. I was telling my wife it's funny because it's a short story book with all the short stories in there. I think I'm pushing 80,000 words, so it's nothing short about that. And unlike Never Say Nevermore, where I submitted one story, all of these are my stories. So yeah, but I think it's fun because what you said earlier, you could put on your hat and focus on hardcore sci-fi, and then you can pull off that hat and put on a paranormal and put on a murder mystery, and and just jump through the whole spectrum of what your imagination allows you to do. So.
And how many stories are in the short story book?
Right
10,
now,
you said?
well, right now there's 8 that are
8?
in there, but it was set up to be 10. You're correct.
Okay.
But I have 8 in there, and I've got about 5 that are fighting for that ninth and 10th spot. I just have to make a decision if I want it to go a little more spooky or a little more paranormal because these other stories could be fill any of those positions. So
So you're kind of going like separating each one. The first one's a horror, next one's a mystery, next
It's
one's
it's it's
paranormal.
kind of it's kind of like that as you go
Yeah.
through. The very first one is The Cellar. I made it number 1 in the book
Yeah.
since it's already been published, twice. But it's the shortened version, like the Never Say Nevermore, with a few tweaks to the story that I developed when I released the standalone paperback. And then it jumps right into the next one, and it's more of a you could call it a mystery, I guess you could call it, and then it kind of flows from there.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously working in law enforcement, I'm sure there's a lot of ideas that have kind of mystery crime that have kind of thrown through your mind. Do you have some
Sure.
ideas on some stories there as well?
Well, in my my original series, I think you have the slide with that one, the Dark World series. In
Yeah,
that one, it's yeah, that one it's pure sci-fi. But book one, called The Messenger Dreams, that one starts off the story. The main character is a police officer who'd been in the service, and
yeah.
he's a Chicago police officer, and he ends up some events take place and so forth. But the cases is maybe four cases. They're loosely based upon things I may or may not have seen during my law enforcement career, and so they're in the beginning of that book, and then so I did in those cases, at least lean into things I've been around in my past experiences. Yes.
The old Dragnet line, right? Change the names to protect the innocent,
That's
right?
it. That's exactly what I had to do, protect me. And
Yeah.
then the other books are all part of that series. There's like 4 core books that are the actual 60 to 70,000 word books, and then the intro book was a very light book that kind of, gets you started in the series, and the handbook is I build this up where if a person reads a whole series, and they wanna become a character, which is called a Truth Dreamer Guardian, then this is their handbook. It's kind of like your scout manual. It tells you how to become one, and it's actually got real stuff in it. And in the book series, they were spinoffs of the ancient Freemasons, and I'm a Freemason. Just full disclosure here, but so that's but that whole series there is your typical thing you hear a lot on across the board in the sci-fi, and that starts off kind of like that, and then it goes into the background. You find out it's dealing with the Anunnaki, ancient clay tablets, ancient gods that still exist, and then you find out, hey, there's some aliens who have been hiding among us that look kind of like reptilians, and that's a whole series takes you through all that and how they're controlling the government and they're looking to overthrow the world, and that whole series runs you through that, where this main character finds himself going from being an officer, a helicopter officer in the or he's fixed wing aircraft in the military, to a police officer, to where he's on the run for his life because several different groups of people are trying to take him out because he's found out too much, and that's that whole series, The Dark World. So I enjoy it. I still get people like reading it and to get back with me on that one. So
So does that take place then in on Earth mostly, and then
this
goes to outer
well,
space?
since you asked,
Yeah.
it no, really, it starts on this Earth, or a
Uh-huh.
Earth, which I consider it this Earth,
Yeah.
and once you start diving in, you find out that the Anunnaki came here 500,000 years ago, and that they originally, but before them, the reptilians were here during the dinosaur age, and that the Anunnaki arrived, and there was conflict. The reptilians were driven underground, where they remained, and Anunnaki basically created modern man, the Homo sapien, through the mixture of their DNA with Neanderthal, and developed modern humans. That whole background's in this book series, and then once it goes from there, then it just starts continuing. Where he's trying to figure out what's going on. He's learning more and more about the things, and by the end of the last book, they actually leave the Earth. I'll say that, since we've talked about space travel, and they end up on Mars, where they find an old Anunnaki base. And there's a whole new series that's drafted that I don't think I shared the pictures with you, but it's on my website. And and I have a standalone different series, which is all about. It's more, the other series is more like a Star Wars type of a series, 2 books, and it's the Adventures in the Imperium. At the end of that second book and into this fourth book, the characters meet and actually go through a dimensional area where they meet each other. So it becomes a cross pollinated story, and then it starts a whole new series of 5 more books. They're
Oh,
all there. It's all outline drafted. All the when I write, I'll probably get off script from what we're doing, but when I write, I see what I'm going to write like a movie, and so I end up I really see it like you're sitting there watching a movie. And what I do is I put this headset on, I open up Microsoft Word, and I start describing what I see. Once I get to a stopping point, Then I'll go back and play it back. So it's text to audio, and I'll hear the boo boos and the wrong word that I may have used. And then I'll start running it through all your Grammarlies and all your other things to clean the text up, and then I'll move on. So by doing that, and sometimes I'll dream up something that would have fit better in a different chapter, but I don't get rid of it. I'll put it to the side because I know one of your questions will be, what kind of writer am I? Well, I actually will outline a book and sometimes a whole series of books, and I will actually draft the epilogue, and I'll draft a prologue for a book, and I'll outline roughly say 10 to 15 chapters, and then I pantser my way from the end to the end, and then I change either into the book if I need to, and I always leave each book as a little bit of a cliffhanger. So if you pick up the second book, which you might ask in that series, it's you could watch them just, or you could watch them, yeah. You could read them. Yeah, I mean, I'm watching them, right? You could
Yeah.
read them standalone, but it would be like going to the movies and watching part 4 of Star Trek or something, or that's maybe bad
Right.
because they're all pretty independent. But part 4 of Lord of the Rings or part 3 of Lord of the Rings, you would get lost if you don't follow the series. So by going through the books. And again, the intro book is really written because at book one, I had a lot of people asking questions. Well, how did these reptilian aliens get on the Earth? And then, so I wrote the whole thing about explain how they came here during the age of the dinosaur and colonized the world. And actually, they're the ones who really built the pyramids and all the great things on the Earth. And then when Anunnaki arrived, they conflicted, actually hurled an asteroid into the Earth to destroy it and send the reptilians underground and kill the dinosaurs. And then they seeded the Earth. And then at that point, they began to raise their humans to take over the Earth and be under their control. And they established government and religion from the Anunnaki to these humans. And so then reptilians kind of snuck back in the picture, and they can change, shapeshift to look like a human. So many of our world leaders, in the book are actually reptilians. Yeah. I've been asked that by others. How much this is real? I say, your guess is as good as mine. So, but anyway, so that's kind of how that all just starts with, these brain things. I might be driving on the road, and I saw this whole scene where Dylan has dreams, and that's why he's a true dreamer. And he actually goes out of his body and floats up, and he sees an ancient battle, which was the precursor to the attack on the flood that started the Noah's flood in Sumeria. And so by seeing this as I'm driving on the road, all of a sudden I see this guy floating through the air, and I see these pyramids. I see these people fighting. I see guys floating by on a craft firing red laser beams. I see a red dragon of fire come up out of the ground and fly through the crowd, spraying them with fire. And I see all this. Now, of course, I didn't wreck, thank God. But so by the time I got to the house, I had to run in and quickly start putting this down on paper, before I forgot it all. So,
Yeah, remembering all those steps and going
oh
back to
yeah,
the beginning and starting,
oh
that's
yeah.
a challenge.
Yeah, and my wife and kids a couple years ago got me one of those little Linux tablets. I forgot the brand name on it now. Remarkable, and it's actually really cool. It's a little thin tablet, and you can sit and write all day when things pop in your head, and it transfers that data over to the PC, and it can convert it into written text.
Right.
So if you're driving, you stop at a traffic light, and something hits you, you could do voice, so you can scribble down some notes. But you're always writing. If you're a writer and you really like to write, to your point earlier, I'm always writing. If it's not on paper at that moment, it's in my head. And when I get to a place that I can put it on paper, then I do. And I do get influenced a little bit where I'm really heavy sci-fi, and then I'll hear some story about some horrendous murder, and I'll think, but what if it was done this other way? And then I'll create this whole new storyline.
It's always amazing how our minds work when we see
Oh yeah.
stuff and
Oh yeah.
we go, "What if?" Right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So it sounded like the origin story from the dark world. You really didn't have a plan to write that, but people came to you and said, "Hey,
Yeah. I,
I want some answers here."
Right. I was in the middle of writing book 2, The Ancient Ones Revealed, and I had to go back and write the origin story and go ahead and release it. So it actually released between book 1 and 2, and that way it could try to explain to people a lot of what was going on. And then by book 2, when I was finished with it, the people who actually the 3 people who bought my book. No, just kidding. The people who bought the series were like, "When's book 3? When's book 4?" Even when I released book 4 of the core books, I pretty much said, I think I'm done with that for a while. And then people saying, but what about, because you left them in space, and what about, and then I thought about creating this whole new series. And so that's the, on my website, if somebody goes out there and looks, they'll see they all got blue covers. And that's a whole set of 5 books that pick up, and basically, without going down the whole rat hole here, these two are sent inside of a black hole. Now, some people believe if you go through a black hole, you may come out in what they call a white hole, and on the other side is an alternate universe. And so, in my book, they do. These two ships from different times, different worlds, different, they get pulled into the same thing and pushed through this black hole into this alternate universe, and they meet up, and after they go through their initial conflict, they become friends. And you've got the Dylan Bryant Truth Dreamer Guardian, and you've got the other guy, Jax. Oh heck, I forgot his last name. Sorry, Jax. But I got him, and he's the head of the other group. And then they go through, and they basically find out that the creator of everything had some rejects when he first was creating things, and these things were cast into this star, into this black hole, to be imprisoned forever. And it's actually what lures somebody to try to come free it. And that's this whole other series. So anyway, yeah.
So then, do we have some other books? I think you had like gave me a modern Civil War
Yeah.
book.
Yes, yes. Altogether, I've authored or co-authored 20 books total. This one's the only nonfiction I have. Some people ask me, why isn't it fiction? Well, because it's not. This one here, The Modern Civil War Survival Guide, it's not a prepper book. I've had a couple people ding me and say, it's not a prepper book, and they're right. Spot on, it's not. And by prepper, the word, that just means survivalist. It's not teaching you how to
Right.
get water off a tea leaf and save it for the cow or something. This one is more explaining the geopolitics of the world, what to watch, what's happened before other major civil wars. And I don't just mean the US Civil War, I mean around the world. There's been a lot of civil wars since what happened in the US.
Right.
And it explains our next civil war will not be a blue and gray army meeting in a field and shooting at each other. It's going to start off with riots in the streets, people trying to assassinate each other. All that's in that book before they attempted on our president, and then before they did the recent one, whoever did it. And so all that's in this book already, but it's telling you these are the things that start leading to destabilization. Then you got to start watching, because they're going to start watching, the underground the New World Order people of the underground government, are going to start looking at ways to destabilize as much as they can, because there are people on our planet who have a goal to get us back down to under 1 billion people globally. And it's because they want to save the planet, and they'll do it at any cost, whether they introduce viruses or they introduce war or whatever. It's all in this book. It talks about things to watch for and be mentally ready. At the very back, the last chapter is a very high level prepper guide, but it's nothing like the guys who got good books out there on the topic. But it is an eye opening book if you read it. And you could say it's fantasy, but I don't think it is.
So, how do you think your writing has changed through the years?
Well, I don't use a pencil anymore. I know what I know what you're really asking.
Yeah,
No,
evolving your stories, and
right,
you
sure,
look
sure.
back on some of those old stories and go,
Right.
"Wow!" I was like,
The two stories that are in the one of them is called Trinity County, and it's at the name of the county where I now live. That story, and the original Adventures in the Imperium book, those two were actually written in 2010 and 2011 by myself and a friend of mine, and we just sat on them. We never tried to publish them. And in 2020, I published the first version of The Dark World, Book One. And I thought, and I actually did what a lot of people do when you get started. I went out and found on the web all these companies, kind of a vanity press, like, send me your
right,
manuscript and I'll fix it and make it pretty and publish it, and you'll become a millionaire, right? So yeah, right.
yeah,
So I did lose a lot of money by giving them my money, and I gave them my manuscript, and they did a very, very bad job on it, which really taught me a lot. They farmed out the editing to some people whose English is not their first language, and they took a what I would consider an okay first published book, and they butchered it so badly. And I, being young and excited, young, it was 5 years ago, but younger and excited about getting my first book out, I just took it, signed off on it, and sent it to the masses. And everybody that knows me and likes me said, "What the heck is this?" And then when I read it myself, I was appalled that they left editor's notes in it. They left, I mean, they just did crazy stuff. They took out whole sections of a storyline. The story's going along. I said, "Whoop, hey, we're over here," and you're like, "Well, what happened?" So, but I learned, right? And then and they charged me heavy money for putting it as an ebook on KP, Amazon, and as a paperback. And so, because of that, I went out and learned on my own and found out what I probably should have known already. And I learned about Draft to Digital and about Ingram Spark, and learned about ACX, for your audiobooks, and Fiverr. There are certain things Fiverr can do well for you, and there's some things you should not have Fiverr do for you.
Right.
And so I learned all these things, and I paid for the covers. I paid for my barcodes. I went in, joined Bowker, and paid $300 to get 10 barcodes and all this. And I went through that route. It was a learning process, and I was paying decent money for nice book covers. On none of the covers I have now, all these are mine. But I paid someone else to get their book covers, and I spent a lot of money. My wife totaled it up, and in my first like 2 years as a indie author, I shelled out about $8,000, and I got back about $500 in book
Yeah.
sales. And
Yeah.
so, so I learned real quick, if you're in this for the money, you probably shouldn't be. You should do this for fun. And if
Right.
you share your books, great. And after that, by my third book, then I started learning better, and who to edit your book, who shouldn't edit your book, what software will help you. I'm one of the people that, some people don't like you if you say you use any kind of AI, but I use Edit GTP. It's a AI editing program, but it's so rich and deep. It's like Grammarly on crack. And so if you use Grammarly, you're using AI, so don't fool yourself.
Right.
And if so I use this program, and no, I don't use it for ghostwriting. No, I don't. It doesn't do it anyway. It's an editing program.
Right.
But so that's what I've done.
Well, and your editor is putting their stamp on it too. If you use a human editor,
Right.
they're making changes and
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
rearranging words and stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah.
their
And
style comes into play as well. So
exactly. And
yeah,
and if you got a good editor you trust, then it's not the problem. Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah. It took me a while to find one. I have one now that I like a lot, though. Though
yeah.
she does warn me sometimes about it,
It,
putting in my personal feelings into my
well,
stories
you know,
sometimes. So
you're right. Plus, they'll warn you because I don't think about things like one of my early books. I was talking about in the storyline. There was an author, and so I just put, yeah, he's out there pushing his books on Amazon, and the editor goes, "Bam,
yeah,
do not put Amazon. Say he's selling them online." And I
right,
said,
right,
she goes, because if you put Amazon, no one else down the pipeline is going to publish your book or carry your book. She said, Barnes and Noble, nobody else, bookshop.org, nobody will carry your book if you're saying buy books from Amazon. So, and I didn't think about that, but she's been really good about things like that. And so, yeah, to your point, makes you see things that you don't see. And then a lot of times we'll talk about it, and then she'll understand why I did what I did. And usually, I'll still make her changes usually. And we had a different editor on the Never Say Nevermore. It was an editor from the group. She was great to work with. I really enjoyed working with her.
yeah. You got to be careful of that in your back matter too, because if you've got links to Amazon and you're trying to put it on Ingram Spark or any of the other
Oh yeah.
ones,
Oh yeah.
they'll reject it and say, nope, you can't have those links in there. That
Right.
says Amazon.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. What I usually do is the links I put are to my personal webpage, to my
Right.
author. And I've got two web pages, my author webpage that you were looking at, and I got the publishers, which is the first website I started, and then using Trutelia or however they pronounce the word, I set up my author's webpage, and that it's designed 100% to use for authors. So it's a great, great website for like $9 a month, and it's just got all kinds of links. So I use that one now. But I put either my earlier books all had my publisher's link because you can see the same things there, or my last few have my author's link, so you can go to that website.
So is there any places that you've traveled to that has inspired you at all in writing the books? I mean, have you
Well,
been to space?
that's one place I haven't been, besides the space between my ears, I think. But no, during my military career, we talked about I made it to Germany for fun-filled 6 years. But, no, in my corporate world job, 24 years, I actually spent 8 weeks a year traveling around Europe all over the place. And so some of that inspired me because one of the books I have out is about a Greek soldier in 500 BC whose ship is struck by something coming out of the sky, and it turns out to be a spacecraft. And he gets saved by a woman, but she has fins, and then she gets out of the water, she has feet. And it turns out to be, he finds out that she's from Atlantis. And so then he ends up going there, and they end up fighting. My bad guys are always the reptilians. The reptilians are taking over the Mayan world over 500 BC in Central America. So the Atlanteans are trying to stop them. And so that whole thing was because I did get an opportunity to travel around Europe quite a bit, and I've been to a lot of the key places. And you go there for business, but you get a few days to be a tourist. And then and part of my job, I also traveled a lot to China and Taiwan, and so I went there on business. So I had an opportunity to see a lot of those cultures, and some of that really has kind of influenced some of the deeper things. I think in book two of the Dark World, they travel across from the United States across Europe and end up in Saudi Arabia, and a lot of that is from things I've personally experienced and or have read enough on that I can make a good you know I guess, story for it.
So you mentioned some books that you're always writing down ideas and stuff. Do you have a book that you haven't written that you really want to write, and it's just kind of still burning a hole in your head, and something
Right.
different maybe than what you've
Well,
written before?
the book series that two of my daughters, Brandy and Cassie, are involved in, The Ghosts of Hollow Ridge and Mystic Secrets of New Orleans. They're both kind of ghost story slash paranormal. There's a third book in that I'm writing, and I was deeply involved in the first two books, but this one's me, and I've been wanting to get it done since I think 2023, and it's drafted, but it's still out there. But it's basically finding a lost city in the Amazon. Now, if you know nowadays, they're doing a lot of lidar radar from space, and they're finding huge cities under the canopies of the Amazon that people never knew they were even there. And in
Right.
my story, it's one of those cities, Mysteria, but they read about it in some old text. It's all part of the storyline. But so that book I'd like to get around to writing again. I worked on it for a while, hot and heavy, and then it went on the back burner. And I had another one that I outlined and I never got very far, but the killer was murdering people by slicing them open with a scalpel, but then he would impale them with an ice pick, not an ice pick, but a pick of ice, and that
Oh,
way it would melt. And when they go to do forensics,
right,
they don't know what stabbed them, right?
right,
And he was using ice bullets, and the guy
right.
was kind of like a BTK killer. He was going in homes through the back door and windows and killing people. And I drafted that one to a point, and I just stopped. And I keep thinking I'm going to go back and pick it up, but I've been, like I said, what I have in my immediate roadmap is finishing up the short story book. Followed by it, I actually have outlined to do that book three of that apropaic amulet, and that's the book of that ghost series. And then behind it is the 5 book outline for the other sci-fi series. So that's going to keep me busy for probably the next year and a half.
No shortage of ideas, it sounds like.
No, that's the problem. More ideas than time to write them. Yeah.
As I always tell people, people say, I wish you could write faster. And I says, well, I do need to sleep.
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
didn't have to sleep, I could probably get a lot more done.
Well,
But
this speeds it up a lot when you can, as you gathered,
yeah,
I can talk. So when I
yeah.
talk, I record.
So we got about 10 minutes or so left here. So we'll start wrapping up the last few questions.
Sure.
So I always ask everybody this question at the end of the show, and you've watched the show, so you know. Bringing life to characters, the name of the show. So what is it you try to do to get those characters to pop off the page and make them realistic that people love and hate? I always like that. I really love that character. And oh man, I hated that character. I always like to hear that sometimes.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. I some of my characters, and I know we didn't go into this, but it's kind of in your outline. I do base them on real people or real people I've met or real things I've experienced, and so I like to try to make the people have fault but not be helpless. And unless that's their role in the story, if they're supposed to be helpless, but I like the people to when they come in and read it, it's like this guy sounds real because a lot of times they're based on a real person, and so that's that's probably why they sound sort of real. But I'll put in something, and every time they think they figured it out, they haven't, and you start having to figure it out all over again. And then I'll bring in side characters and I don't kill off a lot of I kill off a lot of people. I'm not gonna say I don't, but in the books, and but
Yeah, we're sure you clarify
right,
that. Yeah.
right, right. So yeah. Well, that was on the story of the seller. I was talking about, yeah, I was a cop, and the cops in the story are kidnapping people and torturing them. And this lady goes, you shouldn't be saying that. I said, it's in the story. I was a cop, but I wasn't involved in that stuff. So I had to make sure she understood that. But anyway, so that's really kind of what I do. I try to make characters I think people will like to a point. Uh, that I try to make it sound real. Nobody's Superman. Even Superman got beat up in the last movie that came out, and the critics beat up the guy who made it. So, the you can't you have to try to have some realism if the story is supposed to sound real, right?
Well, Superman even died in the comic books, and they
Well,
eventually brought him back to life. So
yeah, he died in the other series that was made before the
yes,
most recent movie and brought him back, right?
yeah. So it's like, yeah, it's, and that's always what a lot of people said to Superman. He wasn't vulnerable enough. He was indestructible, and
Right.
that's the thing. Nobody is invulnerable.
That's true.
So everybody needs to have faults, and everybody needs to bleed and get hurt, and maybe the threat of dying, obviously too. You watch these shows, and their main characters like, yeah, they're not going to kill him off. Well, sometimes they do. If their
Yeah.
contract is up, right?
Yeah, yeah, or Game of Thrones, right? Every week, you don't know who's gonna make it through the episode.
So, have you won any awards for your books? Anything
N
to brag
not
about?
and not no big recognized. I've had some local, attaboys, but no national, awards,
Yeah.
no.
Do you ever submit them for? I mean,
I
the problem
the
is there's so many out there,
right.
and there's
I
a
did
cost involved.
yeah, the first couple years, I always spent money like water, and,
Yeah,
yeah, I was doing a lot of that, and, I met some nice people through the process, and, yeah, but no, I don't do that. I don't really do that anymore, and then yeah,
nice. So, what advice do you offer aspiring authors who get into this crazy world that we're in? And you kind of gave a little bit of the advice before about
sure.
don't
Yeah,
go crazy and spend a whole lot of money at first. So that's kind of hard to do when you're first getting in. But
exactly. If you have the opportunity, find a group around you of like-minded people that are wanting to write, just to write. And then when you get with them, if you can, I know some cases it doesn't always work out for everybody, but if you can, then do that. And that way you can kind of build your craft and you can get some sound back from the different people in your groups, get a beta reader and all these people to kind of help you. And determine what is your genre, what makes you tick. Don't write something you're forced to write because you think somebody wants to hear it. One of my pet peeves is it's not a bad thing, but I hear so many authors say, "I'm doing a reimagination of Jack and the Beanstalk." Well, great,
right,
but can you create something of your own? And I
right.
mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But so those are the things. Is try to be creative. Try to make something that you want to write. Try not to spend a lot of money. Don't get suckered into sending off your manuscript to somebody who's going to take a lot of money and make a piece of crap. Don't sign away your rights to your books, and then slowly develop yourself to create your first little ebook, and then learn from there. That's what I say. Take it slow. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Well, and you probably are getting them because most authors are. You're getting a lot of these what look to be AI generated emails coming in saying, "Oh, I'm on a part of a book club, and I'll get
That's
2,000." Well, it
that's
used to be a
the
hundred. Now it's
yeah
up to
yeah
two and 5,000 readers.
that's the most recent one I've been getting pounded with, and it's funny
Yes.
because 3 different names, and it's exact same
Oh yeah.
text, and so what I've done to all of them is I write back and say, "Thank you for your inquiry, but I love that this is written by AI, and I'm not interested. And I've
Right.
said it to each one of them. Like, they don't care, but I at least get to tell them, I know you're full of it. So, yeah,
I never get an answer back. I do similar stuff. I say,
yeah,
if you're looking for money, if you want
well,
they say, your book club. Well, I can get you in front of the book club and they can talk to you and they can read the
yeah,
book. I said, great, go buy the book.
yeah,
And you read it. And if you guys read it,
right,
I'll do a Zoom call with them and stuff. But
right. Well,
if you're going
that
to ask for $1,000
well, they want to,
up
yeah.
front, forget
Well,
it.
this last one from this Laura from the book club, she you know wrote me this, and I said, my only reply was, "How much?" And she wrote
Right.
back, "Well, I appreciate you asking, but let me tell you what we do." Blah 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 blah. So I copied and pasted my first thing saying how much, and then they came back 500 for this,
Yeah.
1,000 for that,
Right.
1,500 for this, and I wrote back and said, "Thank you for your inquiry, but this is obviously AI," and
Right.
then that was it. Yeah, it's fun.
So, any marketing tips?
Well, you can spend a lot of money there too. I've spent some money taking some different classes, some Mark Dawson classes, which are very interesting. The UK. I
Okay.
don't know if you've ever taken those,
Oh,
but
yeah. I've
yeah,
seen,
Steve,
yeah,
yeah,
sure.
Steve Piper. His is actually are very interesting to help you get focused in Amazon and Instagram sales. And so that's cool. I blew some money early on hiring some of these Fiverr people, and it was just a scam. Not that all Fiverr is. I got some people in Fiverr that do some great side jobs for me, but those seem to be the marketing ones because they take your money, if it's $50, and they generate this whole fake portfolio of what they did for you and send it back, and it's just trash. So try not to do that if you can.
I always love they always start at $5, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
At least they used to. Maybe there's
Oh, they
inflation
still
now.
do it. No, they still do. It's like $5 when we click on them, the lowest thing on their screen is like $50. They forgot to
Right.
put the 0, right?
Yeah.
And then yeah, it's just crazy, and, if they actually could even remotely do what they say they're gonna do, and they don't really, they just really don't. It's all a big mill over there. They'll say, "I'll get 100 people to follow you." Well, it's the same 100 people sitting in that giant auditorium with you from your
Right.
company over there, right? That's so all 100 people like, "Okay, on the big screen. Now everybody ping, DG McCool Jr." And so it's that kind of craziness.
Yeah. So, do you do any author events? Do you do any traveling, book
I
fairs, or
I did. Last year, I went to four of them in Texas at different parts of Texas. This year, I went to 2 early, and then I canceled out of, 2 others I originally signed up to go to. Um, I don't mind going. They're fun because I normally go alone. If you go by yourself, it's so hard to do anything because you're setting up your booth, you're setting in your booth. You can't really leave your booth if you're trying to, talk to people about your books. And a lot of the other people have 2 or 3 people in their booths, and they rotate out and go walk the floor and meet other authors and stuff. And for me, just sitting in the booth for 12 hours, repeating what my book is about, which is fine. That's why I'm there. But it's just kind of lost its luster. And you might sell 5 books or 25 books, but um, then at the end of the day, I went to one in Dallas last year. I spent about $500 to go to the show, and I sold like $150 in books, which is okay. I sold something, but it just there was no ROI on some of that, and
right.
I'm still just a face with a funny hat on the website, right? So people don't people some people actually recognize me and come up and say, "Oh, hey, I saw your website or I saw your book," and it's nice. And of course, you have readers that will actually do that, but I'm not James Patterson, so
Yeah, have you ever done any Comic Cons?
I have not yet, and I really want to. They had a couple of them
They're
near
hard to
here.
get into sometimes,
Well,
depending on which
yeah,
ones.
there's a couple of them that's been near here over in East Texas, and I really, really thought about it. But in fact, I even inquired this year about one of them, and I had 2 different ones I backed out of. I had a table already reserved and everything, and not Comic Con, but book author book events, and I just pulled out because I'd been to them the year before, and it's like I don't know it. I like getting out there. I know you travel a lot and you go to a lot of them all over the United States,
Mhm.
but I am retired, so I don't have the excuse of that. But I just don't, I don't do it right now.
Yeah, fantasy and sci-fi usually. I mean, I've done a couple of Comic Cons and I did okay, but mystery crime is not really there. It was a fun event. I loved it. I got to see everybody in the costumes. Got to take a lot of pictures. Everybody walking by. But sci-fi fantasy authors, I know several that do very well at them. So
Yeah,
something to consider as your catalog grows and stuff. So,
sure.
so your website we've got here. I'm going to throw it up here. That's not right. Well, what's Zachary? That was last week's.
I was going to say that name didn't look quite right there.
Oh, let me go grab your website. I guess I forgot to. I thought I updated that.
That's
But I'll
okay.
grab your website
We'll
here.
give
It's
Zachary a little more push there.
yeah, Zachary. Yeah, Zachary. We lost him at the end of the
Yeah, you
episode
lost him
last
at the
week.
end.
So
Yeah, it should be the author dgmccool.com.
yeah, yeah. So let's edit that real quick. Wow, I thought I was doing pretty good today, but I
That's okay.
missed that one. So all right, there we go. There, that's better.
All right. Thank you.
So
Yes.
on your website, you've got links. Do you do a blog, a newsletter, or anything like that?
Yes, I do have a blog, and I'm supposed to be updating it weekly, and I've fallen behind a little bit, but I do have a blog. I don't do a newsletter as much as I do a mailer. I've got a few hundred people in my mail bag there, and
Mhm.
I send those out. What I do have on that site, if they go across the top right, the link to a lot of other things I have where I did interviews like this with other people over the last 3 years, 4 years. And then I've also got, like I said, the uh, tab where it drops down to all the music, and then of course the books. And then the books, it allows you to break them into series and of course individual. And if you click on, say, Messenger Dreams, where you're going to see it as KDP ebook, or Amazon ebook, Amazon paperback, Amazon hardcover, because I like to do all three on some of my books. And then down below it'll say Barnes and Noble, and it'll be bookshop.org, and it'll be all these book sites all over the world that I don't even know about their ebooks that Drafted Digital sends it to
Mhm.
about 10 or 15 of them globally. So all those drop downs pop up, and if a person clicks the one they want, it takes them directly to that page. They can buy the book if they'd like, or read about the book. And so I really like that, and that's on there. And then there's a little bit in those tabs across the top. They can go in there and they can see some of the other events that I attended in the past with photos and so forth. And then, of course, the social media links. I recently dropped TikTok. I've tried to play in TikTok off and on for 5 years, and I just got tired of it. And it's weird. You could post your cat licking its hand, and they will let you, promote it. And you promote one saying, "Hi, DG McCool Jr. Here's my newest book. This does not meet our standard." I get that so dang many times from TikTok. I just gave up. I'm like, I'll focus on the other guys. So
Yeah, I've never really gotten into TikTok that much. I mean, I don't watch it that much. Everyone says it's good. It's like
I
they
had
say the same thing with Bookstagram, Instagram,
yeah,
Bookstagram. It's like,
yeah, I had 3,000 followers at the height of my TikTok, and that was my first time doing it. And then, but again, everything I would post, I'd post the silliest thing. I post a picture of my little 3-pound dog running down the road, and I'd get 25,000 views. I'd post a picture of me talking about my next book and get 10 views, and I'm like, okay, this is just crazy. So I just quit TikTok. You young, it's for the young. I'm too old, I guess.
yeah. And you've got a link in there about signing up to get notifications about books and stuff, I think,
Yes,
on your site, right? Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, yes. And on the author site, on the publisher site, the biggest difference in the two, the publisher site, any book you click on only points you to Amazon. On the author site, because of the way the website's developed, you can, as many links as you want to put to a book, you can have those links available.
Right. And you're available wide, so it sounds like, you
Yep,
can get them from a lot of different places. So,
you really can. You can get them all over the globe.
do you offer signed copies of your books at all through
I
like your
do.
website or anything?
Well, I don't as much as I used to. When I go to these events, of course, I always sign my books, and
Mhm.
I've had some people actually have written me and said, "I'd like to buy one of your books, and can you autograph it?" And in those cases, of course, I take all the Cash App and all the rest, so I can work with you however you want to work,
Yeah.
and
They can contact you. Yeah.
that's it, right? And then
Yeah.
and I'll be glad to autograph the book for them, and I've got a whole bunch of the little hard cardboard carriers for the books, so you can send them out and they stay protected.
Great. All right. Well, I think we're a little past an hour here. What anything we didn't cover that you wanted to cover?
No, sir. I think you asked me everything I thought we were going to talk about, and I appreciate your time.
Oh yeah, I appreciate Dell you being on. Enjoyed getting to chat with you finally after we've kind of connected through Facebook off and on through the last
Right?
year or so. But
Yeah, exactly.
appreciate you being on. Good luck with your next books, and
Thank you.
down the road when you've got some other releases, we might
I
look to
sure
bring
will.
you back on the show.
I'd appreciate that, and thank you for your time.
Dig in. So happy holidays, Merry Christmas, all that. And if it's been as warm as it is here, I'm sure you guys are burning up down there because we hit
It's
almost 80 degrees yesterday
well,
in Colorado in December.
it's been in the 60s here in East Texas. There
Oh,
may be other parts of Texas it's hotter, but around here it's been yeah, it's jumped from 40 to 60 in that range for the last couple of weeks.
we have not. We've had one snowstorm this year. Even the mountains have hardly had anything this year.
Mm,
Which is scary for us with all the dry grass everywhere. I'm
sure,
hoping everybody takes care. But
sure.
thanks again for being on. Appreciate it.
All right,
And
sir.
we will connect through Facebook off and on.
Okay, take
Okay.
care. All right, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Thanks, everyone. Just a quick reminder. Once again, my new book is out. Mayhem in Music City, Jarvis Man, Private Eye, Book 11. It's available as a ebook. You can pre-order and you can get signed copies through my website as well. So I've got a store there and appreciate everyone checking out the newest adventure for Jarvis. So he's getting himself in all kinds of trouble this time, going to Nashville. So thanks so much, everyone. I am going to close down. My next show will be in a couple weeks. And my guest will be Jeffrey H. Haskell, and he'll be on as January 5th at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So hope to see you then. Take care. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to everyone. Enjoy the new year.